In this tutorial video, we're going to talk about the basics of working with layers in Photoshop. To make sure that you have the correct workspace, you can go up to the window menu and choose the Layers panel, or you can go to Workspace and make sure you're on the Essentials workspace and hit Reset Essentials. Either way, find your Layers panel and make sure you can see it. So I'm going to expand this column out so I can see it a little bit more. And this is my entire Layers panel. I have large thumbnail preview icons for each of my layers. If you like that, you can go up to the panel menu, go down to panel options, and choose the large thumbnail size. When you're ready, let's go ahead and talk about how we work with these layers. Right now, I have a lot of layers in my project, but I'm not seeing any of them. In fact, all I'm seeing is a blank grid of white and gray squares. Whenever you see the white and gray squares in Photoshop, it's an indicator to you of transparency. So even though we see this checker grid, this is not going to print. It's going to actually print nothing. This is telling you that this is transparent. So how do I get my layers to show up in my project? Well, in each of the layers, you can see a little square to the left of it, and this will allow you to show or hide a layer. And you do that by clicking on this little box, and all of a sudden you can see, instead of a blank box like this one has, you can see an eyeball. This means we can see this layer. And this layer is just a plain white background. So I can turn it on and turn it off to show or hide the visibility of that layer. And then let's take a look at these layers right above it. We have a red gradient layer, blue gradient, and purple gradient layer. So I can click to turn on the visibility of each of these layers. But you'll notice as I turn on each one of them, they hide each other. The purple layer is all we can see now. And that's because the purple layer is high up in the stacking order as compared to the blue gradient or the red gradient. It's essentially on top of them. So because this isn't transparent, we can't see the blue or the red underneath it. The only way to see them is to turn the visibility of that layer off. So now I can see the blue, and when I turn the visibility off of the blue, I can see the red. The next thing you need to know is how to delete layers and how to create new layers. Now in this project, I don't necessarily need to create a new layer, but I want to show you how to do it. And it's important to remember with the Layers panel that you have a bunch of buttons at the bottom right hand corner that are going to allow you to work with these layers more efficiently. So whichever layer I'm currently selected on, if I click this new layer icon and press it, it's going to create a new blank layer. Again, the checkerboard indicates transparency, so there's nothing on this layer, and it gives me a generic name of layer 1. So maybe I want to put designer's name, and that's going to allow me to maybe with my paintbrush write my name. So to delete a layer, I can click on this layer and then click the trash can. It's going to say, do you want to delete it? And I can click yes. And then I need to choose which one of these backgrounds I like the best. And I think I'm going to choose purple. Now normally I wouldn't tell you to delete a layer because sometimes you might want a variety of color options, especially if you're designing for a client. But for now we're trying to learn how to use layers, so let's go ahead and talk about the other ways that you can delete a layer. So because I like the purple and I don't want the blue or red, I can right click on the blue gradient layer and choose delete layer, and it'll say are you sure, and click yes. And then for the red, another way you can do this is you can click and drag onto the trash can button, let go, and it's going to delete that layer. Just make sure that when your mouse moves over that, it looks like it's pressed down and it's going to delete it. And incidentally, again, we don't want to do this. There's no point in doing this, but I did want to show you if you needed to copy a layer, let's say it was the number 2 card and you wanted a bunch of number 2s, I can grab this layer and drag it onto the new layer icon, and it's going to create a copy. It doesn't look like it, but if I click the move tool and move it over, all of a sudden I have two spade cards, two spade cards, that's kind of weird, in my project. So let's go ahead and delete that because we don't need it. But again, with visibility, I can turn the copyright information on, and then let's come up here and talk about how to organize our layers. So as you can see, it's really helpful that I have the 2 layer with the name of 2, and it's at the very bottom, and then we see 3, 4, 5, and it looks like we're missing 6. 7, 8, 9, queen, king, and ace. Okay, so that makes it a lot easier for me to be able to organize and move things around because each of the layers indicates by name what's on that layer. But then we get to the top and there are 3 layers that have generic image 13, image 7, image 11 names that don't tell me anything about what's actually on that layer. And this could happen sometimes when you create a new layer and it gives you the generic name of layer 1, or let's say you're placing photos into your project and those original photos had a weird name such as what comes out of your camera. Sometimes it's like IMG3864, this crazy number, and that doesn't tell you what is actually on that layer. So what we're going to do is turn the visibility on and off. So that looks like the Jack of Spades. So I can double click on this image 13 name, and this allows me to type Jack, hit enter, return, and make that its permanent name. So this is 10, so I'll type 10 and hit enter, return, and 6. So that's a handy thing to be able to do, is turn the visibility on and off of a layer to kind of troubleshoot and see what's what in your document. So let's go ahead and turn on the Royal Flush text, and now we have all of our layers turned on so we can see what they look like. So it's a good idea to rearrange the order of these and put them in the chronological order we had going on with the rest of our cards. So I can click and drag this 6th layer, or this card number 6, and move it underneath. You can see a little line that moves with it. Move it underneath the 7. And now I can move the Jack, and as you can see, Jack right now is hovering above the king, but when I move the Jack down, so it's underneath the king and underneath the queen, all of a sudden you can see that that stacking order mattered, and now the king is on top because the king is on top in this layer order. And last, let's move the 10 down underneath Jack, and now we have all of our cards in chronological order. It might be nice too, because it's kind of a lot of scrolling with this project, to put all of our cards into one folder. So we can do that. In the bottom right hand corner there's a create a new group folder. So I can double click here and name this cards, and then I can click on the top layer of cards, hold shift, click on the 2, and then I can highlight. Then that means that those are all highlighted and I can drag them all into that cards folder. So now with this little toggle arrow I can expand or collapse so I can see the layers that are in there. And the cool thing is that the whole group has a visibility icon, so I can turn all the cards on and off at once. Now that also depends on if their visibility is here. So when I'm doing a royal flush, it includes the ace, king, queen, jack, and 10. So I need to shut off the 9 all the way down to the 2. So let's make sure 2 is off, and we've got all of our cards that we need. So again, the visibility of the cards that make up the royal flush are on, the rest are off. So if I turn it on and off, again, it's only going to turn on and off the group, but it'll leave all these on and off situations as they were. So the last thing you need to be aware of in working with layers is how to transform them. How do you move them around? How do you make them bigger? How do you rotate them? And we do something called Command T or Control T, which is to transform or free transform each of the layers. Something you have to get used to is actually grabbing a layer or clicking on a layer in order to edit it or move it in the actual canvas or project area. So I clicked on the 10 layer, and that's going to allow me to move the 10. And I don't actually even have to click on the 10. I can click all the way up here, and it's still going to move that 10 layer around because it's the entire layer that covers up the entire thing. It's just that these pixels are solid while the rest of the layer is transparent. So I can move that 10, and I can click on Jack, and I can move that, and then Queen, and then King, and finally Ace. And that's not very centered across my document. I kind of want to move it over. There's, a small gap here and then a larger gap here. So again, you can shift click to highlight multiple layers, and then you can move them all at once. Now what I want to do is I want to create a fan with my layers. So with the 10th layer selected, I can do Command T or Control T on my keyboard. And when you hover your mouse outside of the corner, it turns your mouse into this double-sided curved arrow. And that's going to allow you to click and drag to rotate that layer. So when you've got it the way you want it, you can hit enter or return. So I'll go to Jack, Command T or Control T, just slightly turn that and kind of move it and hit enter or return. Queen, I kind of like the way it is right there. King, now I got to, oops. And if you ever transform it, if you kind of squish it and stuff like that, if you hit escape, you can get out of that. So I'll go ahead and transform that one, enter or return, and finally the ace. And again, I'm hovering outside of the corner, turning, and then I click inside, not where any of the control handles are, and not in the center point. But that allows me to kind of create that fan. Now with all of these, again, I can shift click, and I can move them in, and I can even do a Command T to rotate all of them, and I can even grab the corner to make them bigger. Just remember, you don't want to squish them and make them weird, so you can hold the shift key while you're clicking and holding in the mouse to make it a little bit bigger. So I can move that down, get it the way I like it, hit enter or return, and that's the basics of working with layers in Photoshop. A couple other things you need to be aware of is you have these layer options up here that we'll talk about in more advanced videos. We can make a certain layer semi-transparent, so now you can kind of see through the king. We can change a blend mode, how it blends with the layer underneath it, to create some pretty cool effects and patterns. And you have ways of filtering and sorting your layers, and you can lock layers so that you can't move them, so you can't paint on them, so you can't alter them in any way. And then you have all these other extra layers that you can add, such as a gradient layer or solid color layer, but we'll talk about those in later videos.